Really quick before we get going, I just want to say thanks, folks, for all the likes and the comments. Please keep it coming. It's very helpful, and I enjoy the comments. Some wonderful comments, by the way. But anyways, keep the support coming and keep the subscribers coming. Thank you very much for your support. All right, folks, I'm going to do a squeaky chair. Seems to be a ongoing theme here. I'm going to do a another one we refer to as our classics. Camera's probably not focusing too well on it, but that's all right. I'll have a close-up shot. Green butt black bear. It's a workhorse in our box of classic wet flies that we use for salmon and steelhead, even Atlantic salmon. These things have caught us a lot of fish over the years. I tie them at the same pattern. I dress it. It would be a better term, not tie, but dress it multiple different ways over the years. And I'm going to show a couple different, or close-ups, a couple different variations. And I'm going to tie on a size 2 so we can see it really good. And I usually use them on 6s to 2s. It's the sizes that I fish them mostly. I'm going to tie more of my what I call my Great Lakes variation. And I found that, you know, like I always say, our steelhead like a lot of bling, and our salmon like a lot of bling too. So in this case, I'm going to show them dressed up a little bit more flashy. Not the total blowout flashies, but more of a, what I find seems to work 90% of the time on our Great Lakes. And then I'm going to also show a more subtle version, and that's when I use these smaller, more subtle versions. This thing is tied on a 6. I will drop down to an 8, let's say late season, or if real low water, heavy pressure, and I think the fish are getting really worked over and finicky, or crabby, as I always say. And I'll just very quickly, before I tie the pattern, I'll just show the differences and explain what I do. So with that going on, let's move forward, and let me just talk about how these things are dressed and why. Then I'll show you the material patterns, and I'll tie the fly. This is the Great Lakes variation, the one I'm going to be tying. And what I want to do is show that, like, I got a really bright flashy green button here, and I usually tie them just a little bit bigger than traditional. Traditional, it's just like the gap, you know, it's generally what they're doing is they're using between the barb and the point. I mean, there's that much of a proportion for the green on the butt. Where here I kind of extended a bit, and I'm using some diamond braid, Chartreuse, to really get that to glow. And then I'll move the hackle up here out of the way here. You can see traditional chenille with about 3 turns of silver tinsel, and then here for a bump I got that this is a metallic black Estaz I'm using, kind of a large. Anything black, I just happen to like the metallic, but like a black Estaz. And then what that does is that keeps the hackle kind of skirting around the fly, so it doesn't collapse tight against it. It kind of holds that out, so you get a little bit more action on the skirt, or the hackle. I should say the hackle acts as a skirt. And of course, in this case, I'm using black calf tail because I'm just too lazy to go find my black bear. But black calf tail, goat, all that works just fine. And I'll put a bit of a wing on that. The other thing is the Schlappen I'm using. I don't know if you can pick it up in the camera. Yeah, you can. Here we go. That iridescence. I really like that iridescence in the hackle. So I'm selecting Schlappen that I can find that iridescence in it. So that's the variation used for the Great Lakes. Now, that's my, well, I should say what I call my Great Lakes variation. Here's when I'm dealing with low water, clear water, and these fish are really kind of grumpy. This was actually tied with a wing with some black bear. I got kind of a spartial hackle on here. I'm not worried about the shoulder, and I'm tying it really traditional. But in this case, you know, I'm probably using some Chartreuse monocord or whatever, or flat wax nylon for the butt, some hackle fibers obviously for the tail, and then I'm doing the normal medium or small chenille and putting the 4 or 5 turns of silver tinsel. So this is toned down quite a bit. So if you're in really low clear water, bright conditions, sometimes this toned down smaller fly works really good, and I swear I think they're taking these things as a giant emerging caddis. But anyways, so when things get low, the fish get grumpy, the fish have had some pressure, things get lit up, sometimes we just gotta kind of dress the fly down. Don't put as much flash into it, drop the fly size. So I do tie more of a traditional size, or style I should say, and then about the Great Lakes. The other thing you can do is, on this particular fly, I did use a small black chenille. Sometimes if you really want to just bug them out, do some dubbing body. This, I like black Estaz, or if you think it's even too flashy, just go to a plain black dubbing and then rib that in. And actually some of the traditional flies that originally was tied with real seal through a dubbing loop and then counter wrapped with a rib. So even sometimes when I think they're being very crabby, or actually I think, let's say I'm fishing a summer Atlantic salmon, and I think these salmon are chasing, these lake run Atlantics sometimes chase them like caddis emergers, I'll actually dub that with some black dubbing just to give it a more buggier look, and I'll just basically take this pattern and bug it out. So these are the two variations, the more traditional that I'll use, and then of course more of a, get it turned right here, more of a Great Lakes variation. So those are the two styles that I generally dress this fly in. Alright, let's get on with the material list and tying it. Alright, the material list for this fly is, like a lot of my flies, pretty straightforward. I'm not using a lot of fancy stuff. In this case, I'm back to my favorite brand of hooks, Daiichi's. This 2441 is a classic up-eye heavy wire wet fly salmon hook. These guys right here got a nice classic look. Thread, obviously my favorite black tying thread. Now for the body here, again, like I mentioned, this is Chartreuse diamond braid. I like it because I got a lot of it, which has a big influence, and it's kind of shiny, sparkly, and it's a nice Chartreuse. The obviously a medium black chenille. And for the rib, I got, boy, this spool is so old. I bet you this is 60 years old. Something I found buried in my father-in-law's fly shop on a wooden spool, bulk. But it's a medium oval tinsel that I use for the rib. And the, of course, the bump, or I call the shoulder, here's some large metallic Estaz. And then obviously for the collar, I'm going with the this Schlappen, and obviously as I mentioned in the beginning here, I like that iridescent look to it. The wing, we're going with some black calf tail, works really good. Calf tail, squirrel, goat, black bear if you can get it. This all makes a great wing material. And so of course I'm also going to pull my tails off from this. Alright, let's pretty much just the material list. Like I said, pretty straightforward, nothing fancy. Let's tie this fly. Get this hook out of the way. Once again, we'll put in that hook. That's that 2441, that classic heavy wire straight salmon hook. And we'll grab our favorite tying thread, in black obviously. I'm going to come in here, and I'm just using some crappy Schlappen stuff, and I happen just to be using this for tails just because I kind of like it. You can use black bear or calf tail for hair, but I'm using this. And I just about a hook gap of a tail off the back, approximately. And I'll just run that right along the top and tie it down the length of the hook shank. By tying the material the length of the hook shank, you can keep a much more smooth body. If you just keep piling off in the back, your flies end up with what I call lumpy butt disease. However, sometimes I take advantage of that. Like right now I'm going to be cheap. I'm just going to tie in the tips here for about the length of the butt that I want on the fly, because I'm going to stop right where it ends. And that saves me just a little micro bit of material. When you're tying dozens and dozens of flies, all those little material savings adds up. Get that hackle out of the way. There we go. Come around, catch it with a turn or two. And just for time savings, I come up right with that eye comes around, that loop eye comes around, and the wire stops is usually about where I will cut my material. So I can just kind of keep that whole body kind of even right there. Now we're going to come in, collect our oval tinsel for the rib. I'm going to tie that in, once again, kind of the length. Get it secured in there. The body is so short that I'm going to use the chenille. I've been cheating and pulling the fuzzies off, coming up with the little strings right here and tying those in. Check, make sure the camera's doing all right. Kind of self-videoing, so got to make sure we're somewhat in focus. There we go, butt wrap that chenille up. I'm going to stop just about where the wire comes back from the eye, and we'll tie that in. There we go. Secure it. Now traditionally on these wet flies, we do 5 turns of oops, I'm going to go the opposite direction. So I wrapped this way with the material. I want to go, well, I wrapped that way with the material. I want to go this way with the ribbing. Kind of an opposite direction. It doesn't really matter with chenilles, but I'm going to do 3 turns. Where I was going to say is traditionally with a normal body length, the chenille will go 5 turns. But we are kind of shortening it up, so I'm going to only do 3 turns. Get that in secured pretty good. I'm going to get back in here, back up on the body a little bit, because this gets a little tricky in here. Once again, I'm going to pull some of the fuzzies off, catch the string that to make the material out of, the threads, tie the threads in carefully, and all I need is about 2 turns. That's all I'm looking for. There's a turn there, get the little fibers back, and a turn here. Once again, I'm just building a shoulder right here. That's the shoulder to support the hackle. And of course it adds a little bit of flash to the fly. Clean it up. There we go. Now I got plenty of room in here to work. If the Estaz, I don't know, the little thingies of the Estaz get in the way, we got scissors, we can always get in here and clean them up. That goes a long ways. Yeah, now we're going to go after our hackle. And we'll kind of get back up, clean up to a stem here, clip it off. Now I got the stem right here. I'm going to tie the stem in on my side with the dull side in, shiny side towards me. Theoretically speaking, get it tied in. Now, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but a little hackle winding tip. I got about a half a turn of clean stem right there. So when I do that, that clean stem allows that, see how that hackle just straighten itself out? It'll kind of naturally straighten itself out, and now the curve of the hackle's going where I want it. Since it's a soft hackle, a Schlappen, I got to do a lot of grooming, because unlike winding dry fly hackle, this stuff is pretty webby, which is why we want it. We want that nice soft webby stuff to swim in the water. And I'm just going to butt wrap those hackles, and each turn I'm going to kind of groom it back and just work the hackle. Now everybody says how many turns. All hackles different, and so I just say until it looks right to you, and this is starting to look right to me. I do like them a little bit heavy on the hackle because I like that motion. And we'll secure that in with a few turns. I'll get in there, just kind of catch the tip, take everything back, wind back on it a little bit, and then I just kind of do a little bit of grooming, twisting the hackle back and forth. You can see how that lays it down. So if your hackle's sticking out kind of like that and it just doesn't seem to lay in, I'll get my hand out of the way, kind of sticking straight out, what you can do is hold it back with your fingers, take your other hand, grab a hold of that hackle, give it some little 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch turns, and it lays it right over the fly nice. Alright, calf tail. I'm going to go grab a batch of that. How much do I use? It's kind of that much. it's kind of hard to give you a measurement. I kind of clean up all the short hairs. The tips on here can be, there's some longer ones, so I'll come back and stack them in, kind of rough stack, get everything else. And I like the, I'm gonna kind of clean it up here. That should be, I like the hackle to make about the bend of the hook, to the back of the bend. That looks like we're gonna be about there, so I'll just kind of come in, and if you're having problems with your hackle, let me show you a couple tricks. You can come in, a couple pinch, and then just wind back on it and catch it, and that'll get your hackle in place. Or excuse me, your wing material in place. There, that kind of looks good. That's about right. The hackles, excuse me, the wing is coming to the back of the hook, bend of the hook. And a little bit's hanging out over the tail. That's just fine. The hackle's kind of going to the point, almost to the bend. On these things, that's a little larger. That's considered proportionate for traditional wet fly. But I like a big skirt of hackle to swim in the water. Our fish like a lot of it. Do like it, action. And then we'll just finish it up with a classic whip finish and fill it out. All right, a couple real quick tips on finishing up your flies. We look on the video, or excuse me, photographs and everything else, and we'll see these beautiful pictures of classic Atlantic salmon flies tied, and you look at the heads and they're just absolutely glossy, and there's just not a bump or thread sign of the thread. It's just perfectly smooth, no thread bumps or anything else. That always bugged me. And I asked my father-in-law, "No, how do they get those things perfect?" He kind of looked at me and laughed and says, "Yeah, they use black lacquer paint." Well, I'm not using black lacquer paint, but I will use fingernail polish. This happens to be some clear, so if you're really anal, you want perfectly beautiful looking black heads, anything, get some black fingernail polish. This is just I don't know, it's clear. What I do is I go to the dollar store, I buy the cheapest bottle of clear fingernail polish I can find, and I use it because I never get to the whole bottle. It always hardens up on me. In fact, this thing is pretty well set up. It's pretty pasty or gooey. It's kind of moving about like cold winter tar. That's about how fluid it is. So that's a little tip on finishing it. That's what they used to do in the old days for photographs. They used to use black lacquer paint. We got fingernail polish. We use that. That can make the heads really nice. And a thin fingernail polish will actually penetrate the threads and really give you a good coating if you want to go that far. But a lot of these bigger flies, that's what I've been using these days, is clear nail polish for head cement. Anyways, good luck with this fly. It's a workhorse for us. And see you in the river, folks. Here we go. Okay, really quick here, a tying tip. Where sometimes when you're putting on these calf tails, and we're using calf tail or whatever, black bear or whatever, there's not a lot of platform to do a fancy job of weaving and anchoring and locking in the wing. And if you have problems with the wings pulling, here's a quick little tip that'll help you out. So once you get your wing material all set and prepped, just really quick, I'm going to square that off so it's nice and clean and square here. Dubbing needle, get into this, and get it back here. You can see it, fingernail polish, clear fingernail polish I was telling you about. Take your dubbing needle, grab a little bit, and just put a little dab. I get it here in the camera here so you can see it, right on the ends. Just kind of bump it into the tips, the stub ends of the tie-in. Then come in and put it in. What that's going to do is when you tie those hairs in, all that, whoops, get it out of here, make sure here, and have fingernail polish all over the place here. But that's what you want. You want that's going to kind of mush it in between the hair fibers and the thread, and that will absolutely weld that, glue it, anchor it, whatever you want to say, properly secure it right into place. So if you have a problem with your hair wing slipping, this is a neat little trick you can do. Just be careful you don't get the head cement all over your scissors. And of course, then right after that, you just kind of come back and hit it with a second little dose and take a minute and make a nice, neat, shiny, clean, well glued head. So there's a quick way to anchor your hair wings in so they don't slip out. This is Jay at JPEG Guides and Lost River Fishing. We are a year-round fly fishing catch and release guide service. We fish the Lake Ontario tributaries, and then during the spring and the summer we also fish the inland trout streams, classic dry fly fishing. During the heat of the summer we will do the warm water fishing for bass and pike. If you're interested in any of our outings or have any questions, please feel free to email us at fish@lostriversfishing.com. Hope to hear from you, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.